Hey guys, so it's been forever since I last did a data video, but you know what's funny? It's been so long that Konami has released a ban list that I actually still have not missed the opportunity to do this survey video, so the streak is still alive. Huge thank you to the 367 players that did respond to this survey. Really, this video would not have happened without you, and a big thanks to those who shared the survey as well. And as always, definitely go check out those discount codes for Yu-Gi-Oh! Singles and supplies. You'll find all the information down below. Anyways, in terms of the type of players that did respond to this survey, it's usually pretty similar for my surveys, around 80 to 83% being at least semi-competitive, so essentially at least going to the locals level consistently. So anyways, let's just get started with the results, and we have Dice Smashers. So 87% of players thinking that it will get banned. I think this is a pretty easy one to guess. I mean, on one hand, to be fair, technically I don't think this card has been as prevalent as maybe one might have worried about, but at the same time, you know, these kind of cards usually end up getting banned. You have something like, let's say, VFD, you have Azathoth, Numeron, Zexal, even recently the Synchro Calamities, like they all do end up getting banned. So I think this one will probably go, and you're kind of seeing this because of all the K9 stuff that's come out recently. You have D-Barrier, so this card is still around, especially with Justice Hunters releasing Fusion deck, rather a Synchro deck, and then also a Xyz package in K9. This card is definitely going to see some play. You don't really see as much Ryzeal anymore. I mean, it's still around, obviously, you can't really sleep on them, but of course this card has been popular for them just in the prior format, but looks like most people still think that it will stay the same. And then I decided to put some of the Molcharmy cards on here, but it looks like for the most part people do think that it will stay the same for Wallace. Of course, 14% semi-limited. It is definitely the highest one of the other Molcharmies, so Pearlia at 11% semi-limited. And then Meowth, you really don't even see play for this one anymore, just because the play of Malice has gone down tremendously since Justice Hunters have come out. And speaking of Malice, Lancia was definitely something that I think was a lot higher when I asked last time around in terms of whether it would get hit. Now it looks like most people don't think it would get hit at all. You do have Crystron that's actually doing pretty well in the meta. Lancia does hurt them, but obviously I don't think that's a good reason to try to hit this card for Crystron compared to something like Malice was just in the prior format. And now with Dimension Shifter getting hit recently, I think Droll and Lockbird has been sort of the recent next target. But you know what, most people do think that it will stay the same. I think if you were to hit Droll, I mean, for example, I mentioned this way back, but let's say if you have a new kind of Molcharmy, let's say, where every time your opponent adds or draws, then you also draw, and it kind of maybe is an alternative to Droll and Lockbird if you were to ban it. Or I think if you ban it, you kind of have to maybe redesign some of the decks. I mean, for example, let's say like Mitsurugi, or let's say Tier 1 Drytron, decks like that where they just search ridiculous amounts. I mean, if Droll was not around, I think that would be really concerning. And even non-Tier 1 decks, let's say something like Dark World, right? Like, do you really want to play against a deck like that? And Droll is just no longer around, and you certainly have lost Shifter as well, and you're just essentially getting hand looped or burned to death, for example. So yeah, I think it's a little bit tricky with this one. I think there would have to be some other changes if you were to hit Droll, at least in my view. So I decided to put Thrust here. I mean, the last time this actually had any kind of clamoring for it to be hit was about 2 years ago, essentially kind of around the time when it recently came out, just because, you know, people are setting like Eradicator virus, for example, and it was getting a little bit awful, but at the same time it was pretty good since then. And then I guess recently it's sort of kind of come back to set cards, let's say like D-Barrier and another card I'll show next, but about 18.5% thinking that it would get limited, but for the most part thinking it would be the same. I mean, you know, something like Talents did get hit to 1, and even Crossout, for example. I know they're kind of different, but at the same time I think there's definitely potential that this would get hit based on those changes. Speaking of Thrust, so Featherstorm is another one. I mean, 70% thinking it will get banned. I'm not sure, I hope it does, but I mean, when Flunder was meta, this card definitely should have went away. But even now, I mean, Flunder is not meta at all, but you have other meta decks that can just, you know, essentially slap on a Xyz Wind monster. There's a couple of targets for that, and then just play Featherstorm, and it's just really hard. And cards like this, I just don't really think is healthy. I'm not sure why Konami keeps them around even when they're seeing meta play, when you can't just activate any effects. Essentially, it's a turn skip, so I'm not a fan. Hopefully it does go away, but I've kind of lost hope at this point. And then moving on to some Mitsurugi base cards, Kaelin Feral Imps, 62% thinking it will get hit. It's actually a lot higher than I thought it would be. I guess they're really not a big fan of the Mitsurugi stuff, even though while they are still around and topping a little bit, definitely has gone down a lot since post-Justice Hunters, if you would see some of the topping contributions. And so Mitsurugi Prayers is a big one too, 60% thinking it would get limited. It's really strong card, but Ritual, not so much. Looks like most people think that it would stay the same. And then also one of the recent support on Habakiri, about essentially a little over a quarter thinking it would get limited. You know, it's funny with like Rituals. I mean, traditionally, of course, when they first came out, it was definitely one of the worst kind of gimmicks, right? In terms of you needed like a specific ritual spell and then that ritual monster that you had to hard draw. Since then, for example, I mentioned Drytron earlier, so it's kind of weird that, you know, to make rituals meta relevant, I think Konami has maybe gone a little bit too extreme just in terms of the amount of searching that they are able to do and the recursion. So yeah, I think a lot of people are not really a fan of the style and having to go against something like Mitsurugi, because if you don't have Droll, it gets really problematic. Some other XC stuff, so Masquerade, so you're seeing kind of these cards now because of the K9 package, but about 15% thinking it would get changed, most thinking that it would not have any kind of change on the list. And then Ouroboros, so this is something that you'd see in, like, let's say like Mitsurugi Raziel. So hand looping is another one that I think is really toxic for the game. About 17% thinking it would get banned. I'm just not a fan of, for example, hand loop and let's say those turn skip kind of like where you can't activate monster effects. I just don't really understand Konami's logic where they still keep them in play despite seeing some form of meta relevant play. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just complaining, but I just really don't like seeing that kind of cards. So I think another common theme I've noticed in the survey is people really don't like Malice as well as Raziel, but 43% thinking Whitebinder would get banned. I did mention earlier that you're not really seeing much Malice topping anymore, even though they are still a good deck, but I think people just want to play the sort of the new toys essentially with the Justice Hunters decks. And again, with another new Malice card in March here, 20% thinking that it would get limited. So yeah, curious to see what Konami would do, because technically with the new set that came out with Justice Hunters, it sort of essentially changed the format on its own, even without a ban list, and you're not seeing as much Malice or Raziel, but who knows, maybe they still hit some of those cards just to essentially cement the new Justice Hunters decks that they are the ones that you should play. And speaking of Justice Hunters, we have Yummy, where Obedient School is of course a very popular card, a third thinking that it would get limited. If we were to assume this ban list will probably come out, let's say even early September at the earliest after Worlds, I think that's probably a little too early to hit Yummy already, even though it's an indirect hit. I think for now they'll probably keep it around again to try to cement those new decks and make sure that people play them, and I think this will still be around for now, but definitely a candidate to be hit in the future considering how strong it is. And then you have Engage. This is another indirect card for Yummy, but you know what? There actually been a couple regional tops with Sky Striker as well, and of course with the Anime Chronicles, I think they want to keep Engage around and make sure you promote Sky Striker. This is definitely one of their favorite archetypes of all time, clearly. So now moving on to the Fiendsmith stuff, so this is definitely still around as well. I mean, with the new decks, I guess Dracotail can play with Fiendsmith. I think there's been at least a couple of tops with that version, but for the most part, you're probably not seeing it as much as we had just in the format prior, about 1/5 thinking that it would get hit to 1, and similarly for Tract, and this is also getting reprinted in the Megatins finally. You have Requiem, where most people don't think anything would change. I think Moon maybe is the one thing you could hit if you were to, but almost half thinking it would get banned. I think Fiendsmith stuff, I think most people would probably agree it is a pretty fair package. I think where maybe some complaints might be that, you know, you just see a lot of different decks, just throw Fiendsmith in it, and so it essentially becomes very, very similar across different decks. But I guess right now, again, with Justice Hunters, it has shaken things up quite a bit. Not quite sure if they would hit it at this point. Some other potential cards that they've mentioned in the free text in the survey. So again, people really don't like Raziel and Malice, at least from what I'm seeing on the survey. So Duo Drive came up where it should be banned. Splash Mage, people saying that it should be banned. Mistaken Arrest is an interesting one. It has never been the most popular side deck card, but it's still been played enough that it wouldn't surprise people if this did get flipped on them. And it is definitely a strong card nonetheless. Would they hit it? I'm not too sure. I don't think it's been on most people's radar, but interesting that people brought it up. Moving on to the limited and semi-limited, so Skill Drain, most people think it would just stay at 1. I don't think you're seeing much play for this one. I think right now in the new decks, they can kind of put up big bodies without having to rely on monster effects on the field, so it probably doesn't become as effective anyways. Prosperity, I'm just glad that this finally got hit. I think it was at 3 for far too long, but I think most people think that it would stay at 1. Is it a ban-worthy card? Technically, yes, but I'm happy that if it's just at least at 1, I mean, it's better than being at 3. Brand Infusion, so looks like almost half now think it would get put to 2. I was actually pretty surprised when it was put to 1, rather than, let's say, you know, you just ban Sanctify instead and then you didn't have to deal with Gimmick Puppet Nightmare. Remember that we do also have the whole Anime Chronicle Albas kind of deck coming out end of October. There's supposed to be 2 new cards. One of them, I believe, technically is already announced with that new fusion, so I'm not sure what the other new card will be. If it's like Branded Fusion 2, then yeah, of course you wouldn't really want to bring this back. You also have like the Draco Tail stuff that you can play with Branded. I think that's probably a better version anyway, so you have sort of like the Rahu to act as like your second Branded Fusion 2. So curious to see if they will bring this back to sort of promote that new product. So next you have Arch Nemesis Protoss, about 2/3 thinking that it will get banned. I have no idea why this card came back anyways off the list. I mean, again, I don't know what Konami's thinking. Like, in what world did anyone want this back into the game? You know, card effects like this where you just can't activate anything, right? Similar to like VFD, Numeron Zexal, things like that. I just don't think it's healthy for the game. I just don't think it should be around. And then you have Dimension Shifter. I think we'll just take the hit that we managed to get. I'm glad that it finally did get put to 1 at the very least. 20% thinking that it would still get banned. And is it a ban-worthy card? Yes. But will we see it right now? Especially with Malice not seeing as much play? I'm not sure. Again, I'm just happy that it's at least at 1 now. And then we have Call by the Grave. Most people thinking it would stay the same. Talents, same thing. I'm just happy that this also got hit similarly with Crossout Designator. I think this is actually a pretty good number to have. Misk probably could come back to 2 at this point, about 35% thinking that it would. So Anti-Spell, most people think it would stay the same. This is also, from my view, a ban-worthy card as well, but probably not seeing too much play right now anyway, so it's okay. And then you have all those Floodgates. Most people, it's actually pretty similar with all these in terms of just most people thinking it will stay the same. And so at least, again, they managed to hit it compared to just leaving it at 3 for the longest time. Magnemite, not as many people thinking it would get banned compared to, let's say, the last time I asked this question. So, I mean, it is a ban-worthy card to me. Maybe not right now anymore, but, you know, previously, let's say with like Tenpai and let's say even with like Blue Eyes, you know, not only is this a really strong card, but it also helps search in-engine like Dragon, which is really strong. So maybe it'll just survive for now, but they did still hit some other bestials. And then you have Gamma. So most people do think it will stay at 1, but 21% think it will come back to 2. This one's interesting. I mean, I was never a huge fan of Gamma. Where I really didn't like was just those decks where Droll is really strong and sort of like the only chance that you have, let's say against Super Heavy Samurai, and then you draw them and then they Gamma you and then you get even extra punish where they go into Omega, hand loop you for 1. So yeah, that's why I was not a fan, but if maybe that part gets addressed, I mean, I could certainly see Gamma coming back. And then speaking of people really not liking Malice, so about 43% thinking that it would get limited even for Dormouse. And then let's say with Raziel, 58% thinking that it would get limited. And as I mentioned, Malice and Raziel, you're not seeing that much topping anymore, as nearly as much before, because people are just playing Justice Hunters. But who knows, maybe Konami still hits them just to sort of really push on Justice Hunters. I put Ice on here as well, 20% thinking it would get limited. And you know, it's funny, there were even more Raziel cards mentioned in the free text where people want Detonator just straight up banned, and even Sword to be put to 1 or 2. Diagram, I'm not even sure why it's not at 3 already. True Draco, it honestly, terrible deck, so they can come back. I mean, what else uses this field spell? True King Dinos, I guess. I mean, when's the last time you played against True King Dinos, right? Probably like 2019, and even then, it was a rogue deck, and even then, VFD is banned now, so I think this card can definitely come back. Moving on to the banned cards, we have Electromite, 46% think it will come back to 1. I've kind of given hope on this one, so I'm not quite sure about that. Kit, 22% think it would come back to 1. So maybe in the future, I'm not sure about right now. And of course, Instant Fusion will then be brought up to conversation again in terms of whether it should be hit or not. Mew, I think this card could actually come back then, you know, with like Adventure Package, and then you had like all the Pranking Monster being a 1-card combo essentially with this card around, and at that point, this is like 2022, that was considered a really big deal. Nowadays, we've seen a lot better 1-card combos come out since then, for example, like Snake Eye, so I can't see why Mew can't just come back. And you know, most meta decks, when they get hit on the ban list, they at least stay on the rogue tier status for a very long time. Prank Kids just completely disappeared after this hit. It's just not playable at all, so hopefully they get something back. Dryden, I think this could come back, especially with Detonator being around. Unless they ban Detonator, then that argument kind of goes out the window, but I still think Dryden can come back as well. So Arise Heart, you know, I put this on here because I've seen a few people on Twitter say that this card could come back, but it looks like most people do not agree with that and think that it would stay banned. Lacrima, a lot of people also think it would get banned, or rather it would stay banned. So this one was really annoying because of the burn effect, and it came out just before NAWCQ last year, and I had so many of my friends complain how they lost in time because of this card. Just wish it was not around for that particular tournament, but yeah. I mean, we also have a whole new conversation with like potential new time rules coming, so who knows, but for now, I don't think this can come back. Heavy Storm probably could come back actually, and most people actually thinking that it would come to 1. I believe the OCG has it at 1 as well. And then you have Nightmare Goblin. Admittedly, I didn't play Yu-Gi-Oh! Around the time that this was legal. I believe this came back in Master Duel, and I don't think it's been a big concern. So definitely let me know what you think about this one. You have Mermaid. I was around for this one with like all the Orcus combos. Orcus has definitely gotten some support lately. Would this come back right now? I'm not sure. Maybe eventually though. Mystic Mine, I thought I'd put it here just to be funny, and thankfully most people are sane and think that it would stay banned. I also agree. I don't think this is a good card to have around. Other potential releases, Glow Bulb always comes around in this question. So this was actually preemptively banned just before Master Rule 5 came into effect. So essentially it's been banned for over 5 years. I'm not like a synchro connoisseur, so I wouldn't know too much about how much this would change things if it did come back. So definitely let me know. Borreload Savage. So unfortunately, of course, Konami has sort of started to ban like the generic negates like Barone, Savage, to a lesser degree. Appaloosa was kind of a generic card too, so they got rid of those. I think that's technically a good thing. I do kind of miss Savage though. It was a nice, cool little monster to have. You do also have like new rocket support that's been announced. But I think they're probably fine even without Savage. And then Summon Sork. There's the errata. I'm not sure why it hasn't even come back yet. So as always, I want to ask some questions about, how satisfied are players with the current format. And so it's looking actually pretty good, about 75% saying that they do agree or strongly agree that they are satisfied with the current format. I'm sure this would have looked pretty different if I'd asked a couple months ago before Justice Hunters had released. And of course, I did actually ask something similar in terms of, do you like this format more than the previous format before Justice Hunters came out? And again, about 75% agreeing or strongly agreeing with that statement. So I'm sure lately you would have seen a lot of doom and gloom posts about the future state of Yu-Gi-Oh! And the concerns surrounding around it. So I figured I might as well ask a little bit about that as well. But keep in mind the respondents, they are mostly competitive players, right? So I was actually a little bit surprised that it was very evenly distributed like this. So essentially about 43% saying that they agree or they strongly agree that they are concerned on the future state of the game. You have about a quarter that's indifferent and neutral, and you have just under a third actually disagreeing and they are not concerned with the future state of the game. And I guess for Konami looking at this, would they be happy with that? Maybe. I guess it's not like 90% of people being really worried about the state of the game at the very least, but you know what, I think 43% technically I think is still pretty high. At the same time, we don't have a baseline for this either, right? For example, let's say if I'd asked this question 3 years ago, just when sort of Yu-Gi-Oh! Came back to in-person play after COVID, and then there was just a lot of popularity there. Who knows? Maybe Yu-Gi-Oh! Players are just always concerned on the future state of the game, right? Or maybe this actually is a bit of an increase since the past. For me, I guess anecdotally, subjectively, I have noticed a lot more of this concern kind of popping up since Snake Eye format started, but let's say like, I don't know, a year and a half ago, whatever. So yeah, I think there are some legitimate concerns in terms of, previously when people are concerned on the state of the game, it sort of surrounds around the format in itself, whether let's say a deck or card is very toxic. But now you will always have that. But on top of that, now you have some, for example, product concerns, right? In terms of just being very lackluster, not being good for the stores, and being sold at a loss. And then you also have some other card games that's popped up since then, right? Let's say like One Piece, Lorcana. And so I think there are definitely some concerns there for sure. And who knows how Konami will shift things if they will. Now, in terms of how consistently people are playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In this year, 2025, compared to last year, I think Konami would actually be pretty happy with this one, seeing that essentially about 84% are playing at the very least same consistency as last year. Whereas for someone like me, I would definitely fall into the 16% playing much less consistently because, for example, I used to play locals every week. Now I'd be lucky to play once every 3 months, essentially. So yeah, I guess I'm in the minority there. Obviously Konami, so for local tournaments, OTS status at least, when they host locals, they would be reporting the tournament results to Konami, so they would actually have the true values in terms of local attendance, for example, at least at the tournament level. Not that we would ever be able to see those results, but I would definitely be really interested to see that, to see whether it has changed or if at all since the last few years. For example, at least from my own personal experience, I'm in the Toronto area, so definitely I think it's a very, very big scene for Yu-Gi-Oh! And some of the bigger stores, definitely, I don't think the local attendance has changed too much, but some of the smaller ones, definitely, especially compared to I think 2022 was really peak Yu-Gi-Oh! For us in terms of attendance, but not seeing those similar numbers anymore, but still pretty solid. Interested to see, or rather hear from you guys in terms of your local attendance. Anyways, guys, that was it for the Banlist prediction survey results. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Again, a huge thanks to all of you who did respond to the survey, who shared the survey. Really, really appreciate it. Would not have happened without your support, and I hope to do these more in the future as well. So definitely huge thanks to all of you for watching, and well, take care, guys.